With the advancement in new technology, the landscape for power systems is changing very rapidly. Information technology has really made a huge difference in enabling some of the things that we work on. I've been able to leverage IEEE-USA to be in the leading edge of my industry. IEEE is all about a sense of community. I am learning ideas and concepts and thinking completely out of the box. IEEE-USA is my competitive edge.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June edition of the IEEE-USA Washington Update. I'm Eric Heilman, Director of Government Relations here in Washington, D.C. I hope everybody's summer has started off well. There's a lot going on in Washington as usual, so let's get right into it. As always, I kind of like to start with the big picture of what's taking up the bandwidth, what's taking up space in Washington generally in terms of the policy and legislative arena. The fiscal year 2025 appropriations process has started. This is the process to essentially fund the federal government. And this is also the process that has recently bogged down and brought threats of shutdown, government shutdown. If you recall, we finally did last year's budget only a few months ago, several months after it should have been passed. So we're now starting the new process. FY25 formally begins on October 1st. So it's going to take a long time for Congress to work through various pieces of the budget and ideally get that passed in time. And as is often the case, the appropriations process, because the federal budget is broken up into several different pieces that Congress considers on their own, is often a magnet for a lot of other unrelated policy and debate on a lot of other things that lawmakers and legislators find important, from social policy issues to defense issues to a lot of things that are germane and of interest to those who follow the federal government and the budget, but tend to contribute to bogging things down and adding to partisanship. Nevertheless, the process has started. It started in the House. They have begun holding hearings at the subcommittee level on certain pieces of the budget, and then things will progress from there. Similarly, the National Defense Authorizations Act, the NDAA, also another one that needs to be done every year. That process has started. This is the annual bill that funds and authorizes the Defense Department and the entire national security apparatus. So very important, usually a must pass, usually ends up passing on a generally a bipartisan basis, but is still a large piece of legislation that takes a long time. And it's just now getting started in the House in particular. I believe it's on the House floor for a vote, for debate and vote this week. And then we'll move to the Senate. The conflict in Israel and Gaza, as always, continues to take up a lot of space and discussion. There's obviously a lot going on in the executive branch with Secretary of State Blinken and the diplomatic efforts. So there's a lot of focus on that still. And we're getting a lot closer to November. Obviously, this is an election year, and primaries are starting to take shape and project who will be on ballots in some of these key races in November. So a lot of members of Congress are busy campaigning, making sure they get through their primaries so they can get into the general election in November. And now that we're in the summer here in DC, the temperatures are starting to rise, which means a lot of lawmakers are already looking forward to that August recess period where Congress recesses for the month and members of Congress go back home to their states and districts and work and do the representative work and, yes, campaign as well. So that's sort of how things are looking right now here in Washington. And so let's start getting into some of the more specific issues that are important to IEEE-USA and our membership. There's a few bills that have been recently introduced that we have supported and endorsed. This first one is not just one that we support, but one that IEEE-USA staff, and in particular the volunteer members who make up our AI policy committee, have been intimately involved with for a number of months. We were one of the first organizations that the staff that represent Senator Peters, the Michigan senator who is chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate, we were one of the first organizations that staff reached out to for input and guidance on this bill, and we have been working with them for a number of months on this legislation in an advisory capacity, as we usually do. And really, this bill is focused on the use of AI in government procurement. This particular committee has oversight over the way that the federal government procurement programs and rules are followed and administered. And so in using AI in procurement, the governance is going to be a really big deal. And that's what this legislation is focused on. So we're pretty excited that this thing finally got introduced. It was a long time coming. It now has an actual number, S4495, and we obviously will be supporting it throughout its process and hope that we can get final passage by the end of the year. There's also a piece of legislation that's moving in the Senate Commerce Committee that I wanted to draw to everybody's attention. This has been an issue that I think supporters have tried to move for some time, but they are now looking to finally restart the auctions process for the FCC to auction wireless spectrum. It had been paused since March of last year. This is obviously very important. And the Senate Commerce Committee is finally looking to move this legislation to restart that important process. There would also be a provision that sets aside parts of the funds that are raised from the auction and put it into a separate program to expand high-speed internet access in parts of the country that are lacking or really need some focus there. And then another bill that we have supported that actually just now, right before I came on, passed out of the full committee is a piece of legislation to kind of help NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, access a little bit more funding. We'll talk a little bit shortly here about funding challenges that NIST and other science-based agencies have had. So this is a piece of legislation that would allow it to access private sector and philanthropic money in partnerships to kind of help raise funds for a lot of the great work that they do. This is a model that other government agencies use, and there's a process there. So this is another piece of legislation that we support and have lent a formal endorsement to. And like I said, the House Science Committee put it on a fast track, and they put it on their markup schedule for today, where they consider legislation and vote on it, and they just approved it out of committee minutes ago. So we hope that can also go to the House floor, be passed, and ideally signed into law by the end of the year. Let's get in a little bit into the picture on the fiscal year 2025 funding. I teed that up a little bit at the beginning here in terms of the process that is beginning in the House, particularly. As you know, ensuring that the science and technology and R&D focused federal agencies are adequately funded has been a bedrock of our advocacy efforts for a number of years. And we're in a very unique and challenging time right now, coming out of the last final appropriations bill for many of these agencies, where they saw some pretty significant cuts. And the hard part and the real challenge here, not only is that those reductions happened, but they happened in the shadow of the landmark passage of the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022, which essentially focused a lot of money and a lot of funding on these agencies. The problem is it needs to be funded each year by Congress. And the money that piece of legislation essentially promised is not being delivered year by year. And 2024, this last year that we are now living under, in terms of the fiscal year and federal funding, has been a very big disappointment, in particular for NIST and NSF. And it's sort of galvanized the science-based community here in Washington, D.C. to really put a focus on making sure that some of these cuts and reductions are put back in, that we get a little bit of an increase in each of these and start incrementally going back up to what we believe the CHIPS and Science Act promised, and frankly what these agencies need. That process is for that particular piece of legislation that will fund these agencies for FY25. there is likely going to be the subcommittee markup for that bill sometime in early to mid-July. It was supposed to start this month. They've already started pushing back some of those dates. So we are laser focused on making sure that members of Congress, particularly those that sit on these key committees, the appropriations committees in particular, are aware of our concerns, know about our wishes, and really are our focal point for a lot of our advocacy efforts. And to that point, many of you hopefully received an email from us. We have not done a lot of these in the past, but I'm hoping to do more wherever it's necessary. Essentially, we now have a tool, and many of you may have seen this through other organizations that you're a member of, but we can send our membership emails asking you to weigh in with your member of Congress on a key issue. And we sent out a number of emails a couple of weeks ago specific to this R&D funding concern, asking for your help. At the end of the day, members of Congress will pay a lot more attention to individual voters, individual constituents in their districts and states than they will to large organizations, even if we kind of are coalesced in a focused advocacy way. But it's a good balance to what we're doing. So if you got this email, please respond to it. Please fill out the form and click send, and it'll go right to your representative. If you didn't get this, it's largely because you probably don't live in a congressional district or a state represented by a member of either the House or Senate Appropriations Committee. That's kind of who we're targeting right now. You're still welcome to weigh in. I believe this is on our website, and you can go there on your own and do it, but we're really kind of focusing this right now on the members of those committees who are really looking at this bill and essentially writing it right now. We may elevate that later as the process moves forward, but this is a really important tool that we have as an organization in terms of rallying our members, focusing our members on a particular issue that is really important to the membership writ large. So if you got it, if you haven't clicked on it and filled it out, please consider doing so. And as always, you can unsubscribe if you don't want to receive these. And you can also kind of tailor the email itself that will go to your representative. So you have a lot of leeway here, and we hope that you will take advantage of this. And sort of echoing what we're doing is some coalition activity. I mentioned that the community here in DC is really rallied and organized. One of the organizations that we are a member of that I have mentioned many times on this particular broadcast is TFAI, the Task Force on American Innovation. These are snippets from a letter that they sent to Capitol Hill outlining pretty substantially the needs and concerns that the community has in terms of funding and the specific asks that we have for those agencies. There's a link, I believe, in the chat, or maybe scrolling down below if you want to read the whole letter, but it's really good, and that'll give you a very good flavor for kind of what we need to be saying and where our positions are right now. Let me move on a little bit to just some kind of tidbits here and there. It's been reported recently that Congressman Brian Babin, who represents the 36th congressional district in Texas, which is kind of part of the Houston suburbs and then sprawling north. He is reportedly interested in taking either the chairmanship or the ranking member position, depending on whether the Republicans maintain control or if Democrats take control of the House, of the House Science Committee. This is interesting largely because Johnson Space Center is in the congressman's district. So if he is successful in getting the chairmanship, and that decision is largely made within each of the parties in Congress, then we've got an ally in the space industry, at least, that we can kind of work with. Just an interesting tidbit. Don't know how far it's going to go. I don't know. There may be others who are interested in this spot, but it was just reported today. And if you live in Texas and know him, let us know what you think. Let us know opportunities to work with him. Whether he takes this spot or not, he's still going to be a member of the committee. So I just thought it might be something interesting to share with you. Also, there's been some news reported about a new effort in the Senate to put together a framework on AI. Now, you may recall that Senate Majority Leader Schumer worked for a long time to put together an AI roadmap that was very high profile in terms of bringing in high-level CEOs from some Fortune 100 tech companies for meetings and advice. But it had a lot of different components as well, including meeting with a couple of our members as part of the process. That effort was, or that result, the paper, if you'll call it the roadmap, was put out about a month ago, and there's been some division about how impactful it will be. I think a lot of the complaint with that was that it really doesn't offer any specific legislative solutions. This new one, as we understand it, is designed to do exactly that. The Senate tends to like to do this sometimes. Yes, they are organized in committees that are sort of serve at the formal process to consider pieces of legislation and debate things, but senators like to kind of operate independently. And if they're not on a particular committee, or even if they are and they really want to do something, they might grab one of their friends, grab another bipartisan ally, and put together sort of a working group or just an informal task force to do something. And that's kind of what it looks like this will be. I don't know where this is going to go and how impactful this will be, but it's got a very good bipartisan mix of senators who are great legislators. And whenever you have a mix like this, even a small one, you kind of got to pay attention to it, because there's probably some real serious effort being done here. So we'll track this one and see where it goes. It just was reported, so I figured I'd share it with you and just see what happens. Also, just wanted to share that last month, the Mercury News in California published an op-ed that IEEE President and IEEE-USA President Tom Coughlin and Keith Moore jointly did on electric vehicles and infrastructure. We always like to try and get our members, and particularly volunteer leaders, in the news, give them opportunity to pen articles, put together op-eds, and then our comms shop here will kind of help shop it around to various news sources, and this one got picked up. The link for the full article is in the chat here, so please feel free to take a look at it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more, as I like to do, about some of the programming and some of the events that we're involved in. We do a lot of this to promote our membership, to give members opportunity to be plugged in and engaged in the political process, the legislative process, the representative process. And so what we found coming out of the CVD this year was that there was a lot of interest from people who just couldn't come to Washington to meet with their senator or Congress representatives in sort of that one-day focused event that we did in April. And so we decided to maybe flip the script a little bit and go out to the congressional districts themselves, bring together a small group of IEEE members, and go right to the offices that exist in all of the congressional districts for these representatives. And that's what we decided to do in Idaho. We're kind of calling it a pilot program because we're looking for ways to maybe institutionalize this a little bit more. And at the upcoming IEEE-USA board meeting, there may be more discussion about this. But essentially, we gathered a bunch of young professionals here and contacted the congressman and the two senators' offices that represent these members, and got meetings with staff for all of them, where we allowed our members to introduce themselves, what they're studying, where they're from, what their career aspirations and goals are, what they're researching, and we armed them, as we did in CBD, with some talking points and some policy issues. And it was a very successful set of meetings, and we might be looking to kind of replicate this and institutionalize it a little bit more here at USA. So stay tuned. There could be more on this coming in the future. If you were at CVD, or were a part of any of the communications on this, you know that we've been very supportive of a program run out of the National Science Foundation called the National AI Research Resource, or NARE. There's a pilot program over there at NSF right now. We are supporting legislation that would essentially authorize this program to be a little bit more permanent than just a pilot program. And the NARE office and those who run the pilot program came to Capitol Hill last month to kind of do a demo of the program for congressional audience. And all of the key federal agencies were there and hosted, as well as the caucuses in the House and Senate that work on AI. These are sort of informal groups of senators and members of Congress who like a particular issue and kind of stay involved and engaged in an informal way. We are very supportive of both and caucuses and work very closely with the NAIR office. So it was a fun event. It got a lot of the scientific leadership here in Washington here in one room to kind of talk and rally around some of this important work. And then, of course, just yesterday, I got back from our second iWork conference, the Innovation, Workforce, and Research Conference that we here at IEEE-USA have launched beginning in Little Rock last year. We had it in South Dakota this year, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A great conference with a great lineup and a great set of speakers. Essentially, we go to places that are largely a little bit overlooked and underrepresented in terms of federal funding for CHIPS Act money, for example, or other R&D or technology-related grants or programs. Places where there's not a whole lot of focus or love from the tech community at large, but places where we know there is a ripe environment for a lot more collaboration, a lot more focus from a lot of these larger players, and where there's kind of an excitement and a buzz to do a little bit more in the tech space and tech community and tech workforce. And Sioux Falls, South Dakota fit the bill perfectly. We had a number of representatives across government, both state and federal, as well as federal agencies, state agencies, a lot of university interest and private sector as well. And that was kind of the goal. So great conference, successful conference. We can formally announce that the next one will be in Huntsville, Alabama. I want to say December 3rd, but I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's December 3rd, where the focus is going to be on the aerospace and space industry. So we're now putting together a plan for that one, and we'll build off of the success of this one to do that. And right now, I figured it'd be of interest to share that my colleague here at IEEE-USA Government Relations, Erica Wazolik, is at a conference hosted by the White House on AI. There's a number of cabinet officials who are there, as well as other high-ranking U.S. government and Biden administration appointees, as well as members of the Senate and those in the legislative branch to talk about public missions around AI. There's a lot of these that are going on. We try and stay involved in those that we think are relevant. It's all part of sort of the process of networking and learning and connecting the Washington ecosystem in a lot of these tech policy issues that we are involved in. But Erica is at this meeting, all-day meeting right now, and I'm eager to get kind of a download and a feedback from her. And if there's specific things that come out of this or interesting tidbits, I'm certainly happy to share. That's the end of this month's presentation. I went through a lot of these pretty quickly, and as always, there's probably things I missed, and so I'm more than happy to open it up to comments or questions, and I will start looking at the comment section and see if anybody's got any questions that I can answer. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this recorded, thank you for doing that as well. Please spread the word. We like to grow our audiences whenever we do events and programs like this. And the more people that know, the more that maybe can get involved. And that's at the end of the day, our goal. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your month. And we will see you July 11th.